Yesterday, in our discussion here about the final maskana of Rabbi Zera on Daf Peches regarding the reliability of one aide to testify that her husband died, and Beis Din will rely on that one aide and allow her to get remarried, Rabbi Zera said the following. That is, that the Chachamim were machmir on the woman, imposing very strict and severe penalties on her in event that her husband is alive, and therefore he kalta oleh b'tchila, in order that she shouldn't be in a state of igud, which means she'll never be able to get remarried because we don't have evidence that her husband died other than one aid. They made a takana that we're going to impose upon her all sorts of penalties. She'll not be able to be married to this one, to that one. There'll be mamzeres, she can zaksuba. All this is to make sure that she will absolutely clarify, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that her husband is indeed gone. Now, in the back of the Mesifta, he quotes a three-way machlokes, which we mentioned yesterday. I want to review it today, as to how this operates. So the first opinion is the sheet of Tosfos. Tosfos says that one aid is not believed midoraisa in a davar shebe'erva. We require two witnesses to establish that her husband died and allow her to get married. However, yesh kach b'yad chachamim lakar davar min haTorah. The Rabbanan have the authority to undermine a Torah law, and they will exercise their authority to do so in the case of igud, when one aid comes by. Then we have Shitas Rashi in Masechet Shabbos on Daf Mem Hey, and many Rishonim agree with Rashi. And even though the Torah does not rely on one aid, the Rabbanan have the authority, and I'll explain why, to retroactively undermine and negate or nullify the original marriage for the first husband. And that's based on a principle called Afkeinu Rabbanan L'Kiddush Mineh, which is a statement that appears in the Gemara over and over again. And here in the footnote, he'll give you a list, I think. Let's see. Footnote Lamed Vav. He only mentions Gittin, but I know it appears at the beginning of Tzubis, and I believe it appears elsewhere as well, Kiddushin. So in effect, what the Eid Echad is accomplishing is it's giving Beis Din the go-ahead, the green light, to undermine retroactively the original marriage, which is really interesting because if you go with this sheet of Rashi, and as I said, it's a whole slew of Rishonim that accepted this sheet, that were operating within the framework of Ke'inu Rabbanan L'Kiddush Mineh, then when the husband returns, in effect, she's married to the second husband, not to the first husband. And we're going to have to see the implications of that as we go along. Then we have the Ritva sheet. The Ritva, Kimlu l'Rabbanan de Milsa de Avida l'Gluye Shechmarta Olea Besofa Kolkach. Vadai Kushta Komishat. That although it's true that the Torah requires two witnesses, but that's midin edus. One witness is not reliable. However, We have a different kind of an edus, which is not technically testimony, it doesn't constitute testimony, but it's what's called an anan sahadi. We are witnesses, meaning we have enough evidence to assume that Vadek Kushta Komisar, that what this aid is telling us is definitely MS. And why is that? Because we have a principle called Isha Daiko Mitzvah. She will be very careful and investigate before she gets remarried. The Anan Sahadi Bimilsa, we are testifying, meaning the Bezdin is testifying, that this situation is equivalent to Eidos Gemura. The evidence weighs as heavily as if there were two witnesses here, and the Torah itself would recognize this evidence and allow her to get married. Now, where do we know, according to the Ritva, what's the basis, the source for this concept that the Torah relied on the Chachamim to establish as a Bezdin that we have such clear evidence that we don't need two witnesses? Where does that come from? Says the Ritva, and I don't know exactly where he knows this from. He says, Hakosuv Masru L'Chachamim. Hakosuv means the Torah itself transmitted to the Chachamim the authority and the responsibility, ladas, to weigh the evidence until finally they are can conclude that it's a davar mefursam nikar shu emes, and therefore they exercise that authority that was vested in them to determine nikar emes. And if nikar emes, then it's considered like edus. Now, this is very strange. According to Tosfos and Rashi that we had earlier, the Rabbanan, because of Igun, are going to exercise either Afkinu Rabbanan L'Kidushimine or Yesh Koch Biad Chacham Lakar Dov Min Torah. But if you go with the Ritva, and we have enough evidence that the Torah itself would recognize that evidence is truth, so why does that Gemara say Mishum Iguna Ikilu Be'Rabbanan? Forget about Iguna. V'hodi Amrina Mishum Iguna Ikilu Be'Rabbanan Hachi Kamar Chlomar Shechachamim Shehem Machmirim B'Chol Makom Ikilu Bazeh L'Chashvo Pirsum L'Duno Ke'edus Barur Kol Zman Shelo Bo Olav Edei Hakasha. And that's going to explain why the Chacham in this context are not machmir. They're always machmirim. We don't want to let a married woman run around and get married, right? So they should have been particularly careful and overly demanding of the requirements for evidence to allow her to get married. And here they lowered the standards. And the answer is Mishumi Guna. That's what motivates the Chachamim to be mekil and rely on Isha Daiku Mitzvah together with one aid. Now, there's one important phrase here that I want to emphasize, call to your attention in the language of the Ritva. Again, let's go back to the beginning of the Ritva. You'll see Os Gimel here. He says, the Kimlu Rabbanan de Milsa Davidi Ligluye. There are a number of elements here in the equation, the first of which is Milsa Davidi Ligluye. That if there's a lie over here, we'll find out about the lie. Eventually, he's going to come back alive and well. No one would lie, fabricate, and violate truth in a case where it's a Milsa Davidi Ligluye. We'll find out about it down the line. He's going to eventually show up. Number two is Chumra Shechmat Oleh B'Sofa. And finally, number three, Vadai Kushta Kamishayed, because Isha Daika Uminsa. So it comes out, according to the Shita of the Ritva, we have an Emunis that's Doraisa on a Milsa Davidi Ligluye, if we also can add to boot Isha Daika Uminsa. Vatam sheyachlu chachamim lakar mikoach hatamim ha'elu din Torah kevin shadavar masum biyadam. And this is a general statement that the Rabbanan could be oker davar min haTorah because hadavar masur liyadam. Again, we come back to the same fundamental principle. I mean, I understand that according to Tosfos, because Yesh Koch B'Yad Chacham Lakar Dov Ben HaTorah. I understand that according to Rashi, because Hafkinu Rabbanu L'Kiddushin. But according to the Ritva, you have Milsa Davidi Ligluye, and connect that with Eid Echad, and you have Isha Daiku Mitzvah, and Chumra Shechmat Oleh B'Sofa. I understand all that, but where's the davar masur l'chachamim? Where is this? Where's the source for this principle that the Rabbanan have a right to say we have enough evidence here without two eidim, and it's just as good as two eidim, and therefore she can get married? Where's the source for that? I don't see it. Bothers me a lot. Now, just to say a davar masur liyadam, what do you mean masur liyadam? Obviously, they're going to have to evaluate whether or not we have enough sufficient evidence. But where do you know that evidence is enough when you don't have two in the absence of two eidim? And he writes that midas harama mashma shesover karitva shena monasim midaraisa. Interesting. It's not just the Ritva, it might be the Rambam as well. Mitoch umra shechmat oleh b'sofa yikalto oleh b'tchila mevar Rashi atam shekevan shechmiru oleh b'sofa daika u'mitzvah. She will be very careful to avoid any possibility of, heaven forbid, being exposed, being vulnerable to all these terrible repercussions of the Chumra Shechmat Oleh B'Sofa. Therefore, she'll be very careful. Daiko Minsim. Lachein, Samchu Chachamim al Eid Echad Hamatira. Fine. B'shut Rabbi Kivega, done, B'ofen Shaholcha Ha'isha V'niseis below Eidim V'shalo Kidin. Uliachar Mikan, Kfar Noldu La Yuladim V'asheni, Yotza Aleim Kol Shem Amzerim, Kev Shenasa V'liheta. V'achkach Ba Eid Echad Shemeis Baila. So a woman has no green light from any bezdin to get remarried, and she got remarried. She, we could say, took the law into her own hands. Shaloki did. Now she has children from the second husband, and there's a very nasty rumor that these children that they're mamzeret because she just upped and went ahead and got married to another man. So it really makes sense. I don't usually like to rely on rumors, but this rumor makes a lot of sense. I mean, she got married without a heter from Bezdin. Maybe her husband is still alive. Now she went in and got married, and she has children from that second husband, and they're mamzeret. Now, one witness comes to the court to testify that her husband died. Ha'im efshal lismach alei do so, kidin eid echad b'edus isha. Where's the daiku mitzvah over here? Daiku mitzvah means when Bezdin tells this woman, this married woman, look, we don't know if your husband's alive or not. We have one witness. Go out and check it out. Do the investigations. That's not what happened in this case. She just upped and went on her own without any Bezdin. O Shema Kevin Nasa Kvar Va'ed Bolatir Mamzem Lo Shaychas Farsha Daiku Mitzvah. If Rashi is saying that the reason why we rely on 180 is because of Daiku Mitzvah, in this particular scenario where she went up and got married to another man, and then a witness comes, I mean, the whole purpose of accepting this witness is to establish the kashrus of her children from the second marriage. There's no Daiku Mitzvah at this point. Can we rely on an Erechad according to Rashi without Daiku Mitzvah? O Shema Kevin Shenises Kfar Va'ed Bo Lahatir Amamzer Lo Shayach Asfar Shel Daiku Mitzvah Ubiofen Zelo Aminu Chacham Leidecha. This is Rabbi Kivek. Brilliant question. Umaskonas Dvaravi She'en Ha'ed Nem. Umosif Shehu Adin V'Isha Shenises Below Edus Umiyad Achakach Bo Eid Echad Shemes Bailo She'en Mekabel May do so Af Shemeid Ala Isha Shekevon Shenises Below Eid Echad Ari Muchach She'ena V'Dayekes Im Kain Ein Lismoch Al Edus Ha'ed. So now is a case where she got married without any Eidin. Now an Eid shows up to testify that her husband had died. And he says, Ein Mekabel may do so. We will not accept the testimony of one witness in such a case. Why? Because since she got married without any Eidin, and for sure she's not Medayekes. Because Medayekes means after Bezdin hears the testimony of one witness and then they instruct her to go out and check it out, Bashetach, as we say. And therefore, Ein Lisvo Haledus Ha'ed. We see clearly that according to Rabbi Kiva Eger, this whole parsha of relying on one aid is dependent, critically dependent, as Rashi would say, on Daiku Mitzvah. If Lu Yitzu, you have Eid Echad without Daiku Mitzvah, then we're not going to give her any leeway whatsoever. Now we want to go back to the Gemara. Second. Where did I so good at this? At least I'm consistent. Okay. Amar Rav. Let's just make sure we're all on have the place. We are now up to the wide lines, about halfway down the wide lines. I would say the best way is to count up from the bottom of the Daf Pei Chesam and Alf. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. Teitze, mizeh, umizeh. So again, her husband checked out. He went to Medinas Hayam, and now they came back and they told her that her husband died. She got married, and then her husband showed up. Teitze, mizeh, umizeh. Amar Rav, lo shanu. When do we say that she has to terminate her relationship with the second husband? Ella sheniseis beid echad, aval niseis al pishnei edim lo teitze. And this doesn't make any sense. 2 witnesses testify that her husband died. She got remarried, and now her husband shows up alive and well, and you can pinch him; he's alive. And now the Rav says lo teitze. She remained married to the second husband. So the Bnei Eretz Yisrael started laughing at Rav's statement. Asa Gavra v'Koy, the man came alive, meaning her husband is on 2 feet. The At Amrit Lo Teitze, and you're going to tell me that she doesn't terminate a relationship with the second husband? Lo Tzricha, what's the case of Rav? The Lo Yadinale, we don't know who he is. We can't identify. Is this really her first husband? And I don't know why she's not going to identify him. So here's what Rav says, Lo Teitze. Since we're not absolutely sure that this is indeed her husband, it could be the Eidim are telling the truth. Her husband really died. And we have a faceless, anonymous person. We don't know if that's her husband. They didn't have fingerprints or DNA testing. I don't know what. So the Gemara asks the following question: Ilo yadinale. If we don't know who he is b'eid echad amai teitze? What happens in the case where there was only 1 aid, and we're still not sure if that's her husband? So why does she have to bust up her marriage to the shading? We have a man standing in front of us. We don't know if that's her husband. Well, tzricha, the asu beitrei, 2 witnesses came. The Amri, and they testified, Anan Havinan Behadeh. We were with the husband, Michinachik, from the moment that he embarked on his journey, Fiat Hashta, until today. And we recognized this is him. We were with him since the day he left. I can't say it's somebody else, an imposter. The atunu delo yadinale. Maybe you don't recognize him because you haven't seen him for who knows how many years. Maybe his face has changed, but I know him. We know him. Where do you find such a thing that you can no longer recognize a person? By Yaker Yosef, Esecha ve'im lo yikiru. Yosef appears in front of his brothers. He recognizes the brothers. They don't recognize him. So there is such a phenomenon that someone could change his face and you don't recognize him. But now we have two witnesses who are standing in front of us testifying that they were with him for every moment. And this is the guy that just 1 second. Also Beitrei, the Amri Anan Havinan Bahadei, Michi Nofik, the Ad Hashta. We see that our husband is alive. I'm not sure I understand what's going on here. They're lifted in the car. That idea. So, I'm just going to read a note here for a minute. I apologize. He says, Remeidim Shemes. Connected with Shnei Edim Amachishin also. The Omim Shizeu Baila. The Ein Anamakirin also. Afshu Lefanenu. So I think I'm not sure where he gets this from. Okay. So there are two Eidim that say Anan Havis Bahadei, right? Michinafkis ad hashto. The Atun Hudlo Yadina the Yisule. What is Vatun? Vatun is talking to the Bezdin. Vatun Hu Deloya Deina. Oh, look at the next line of the Gemara. Self training. Okay, good. So we're not off the mark here. Again, I don't know why the Gemara didn't spell this out. Maybe I missed that. But what the Gemara is saying is that there are two Eidim who testify that he died, that the Baal died. And now we have two other Eidim who testify about this fellow that is her husband. So what would you say about this case? Is this a conflict between two witnesses against two witnesses? The two witnesses that say that he died. And the two witnesses says, no, he's alive. Well, there he is. That's him. So it means that the first pair of witnesses made a mistake in identity. When they said he died, it was somebody else who died. I don't think this is trey utred. This has to be a case where we should believe those two Eidim who testify that he was with us from beginning to end. But we have two Eidim that testify that, maybe it works like this. Two Eidim testify that he was with us the whole period of time. That's the Baal. And the other two Eidim say, no, that's not the Baal. The Baal is dead. You have a man in front of you, two witnesses saying he's not the Baal because the Baal died, and two witnesses saying the Baal is not dead because that's him right there. And we don't know. We have no way of clarifying. So here Rav says, there are two Eidim who are saying that her husband died. And she's relying on those two Eidim. That's fine. If there was only one witness, then if you have two Eidim who are saying that this is the Baal, and you have one witness who says, no, that's not the Baal because the Baal died, then we're going to believe the two Eidim who say that this Baal is here. And then we're going to say, Af im niseis teitze. When does Rav say niseis lo teitze? That's in the case we have two Eidim against two Eidim. Two Eidim say we know he died and that's not him. And two Eidim say that he's alive and that's him. And we don't know how to identify this guy. Is in such a case, Rav says, in niseis lo teitze. Why? Because she's relying on the testimony of two witnesses. So the Gemara says, sof, trey utraining. We have two against two. We should throw out all these Eidim. How are we going to allow her to remain married to a second guy when maybe her husband is here, he's alive and well? I'm just curious what she's saying. Is she saying that's not him? Okay, then Rabbi say, so this is where we'll pick it up tomorrow. And I wish you a great day. Thank you so much.